some reflections on the race that took place in Michigan and the victory of the Senate candidate, Abdul As-Sayyid. Now, of course, the full name is Abdul Rahman Muhammad As-Sayyid, but then that sounds like a 4th century scholar. So we'll go with Abdul Sayyid. And the reason why I wanted to have some time to reflect on what happened in Michigan a couple nights ago is that this is really, really significant. And it is important for us to have the proper understanding when these types of developments happen. We, of course, are treading a new path. And that path is a path of people who embrace a particular faith. They have certain values, living in a secular society and living in a world where politicians quite often do not agree with those values, and more often than not, attack those values. So the path that we are treading is a path where we're trying to understand our place within society and how do we interact with the issue of politics and the issue of the social issues that we see around us. And this takes nuance, and it takes patience, and it takes education to slowly grasp and understand what our faith teaches us and how we're supposed to approach these topics. So this race, which is a Democratic primary, was one of the most, if not the most, expensive races in terms of primaries in the history of Democratic primaries, where one candidate had close to $70 million spent. This is not $70 million spent on the actual race, which will be in November. This is $70 million spent on a primary. So groups like AIPAC and other groups as well spent around $70 million to push the opponent to win this race. And of course, it didn't happen, and it came down to a couple points, basically. A couple percentage points, which I will come back to this point in just a moment. More importantly, you saw the reaction that happened after he actually won this position, right? And the reactions came from the most powerful people in this country. And they were very ugly. And they were very Islamophobic. And they were very harsh. Why? Because this is something that is different from what the elite are used to. And it's also something different than what you and I are used to. And that is a candidate who is saying no to super PACs, is saying no to a lot of corporations, is saying no to a lot of private interests, and is somehow still, while being outspent 1 to 10, 1 to 11, is still somehow being able to win. This is not how politics used to work. And it still is not how politics works in most scenarios. So what we're seeing and witnessing in front of our eyes is truly something different. It's not something that we are used to. And the same tactics, actually, that were utilized when someone like Zohran Mamdani was coming to take over his position are now being utilized for him. So, the mispronouncing of the name, this is, of course, something that brings a smile to our face maybe sometimes, and we take it lightly. But no, this is actually a tactic. Because when you mispronounce the name so many times, the idea is that this is some guy that doesn't belong here anyways. He has no roots here. We don't know who he is. We can't even mention his name. We can't even pronounce his name. This is part of the process. These are part of the tactics. Then all the other labels that happened with Zohran Mamdani are repeating themselves here as well. If this guy comes in, it's going to be horrible, everything's going to fall apart, nothing is going to work for you guys anymore. The fear-mongering is unlike anything we have seen before. And what's different now is that it's no longer happening behind the scenes. When we were growing up, this is stuff that used to happen behind the scenes. Nowadays, it's not behind the scenes anymore. It's something that clearly and is openly happening. And so when this happens in the Muslim community, you will always have two different, in my humble opinion, extreme approaches. The first extreme approach is to look at this person and their movement in the light of some sort of savior. This guy is going to make it through and everything is going to be different and he's going to change the system and this and that. No. Someone like him, brothers and sisters, not everything that he does is Islamic. Not everything that he does is in line with our faith. We have to be abundantly clear about that. And nor does that mean that his presence, if he were to win, is going to have this fundamental change and impact. And no, the system is not set up for you and I. And it's in fact not even set up for the average American. That's the way the system works and has worked for many, many years. So this is one approach where people will get over-excited and they will look at this person and say, this is what it means for Muslims to be involved on a civic level. And then you will find another group of people who will come forward, the overzealot portion of our community, who I think, by the way, more often than not have good intentions. And they will say, well, we can never get behind someone who has this opinion or that opinion. This part of it doesn't align with Islam and that part of it doesn't align with Islam. Therefore, I can never support anything like this. And the very fact that you even discuss it is you are legitimizing a system and so on and so forth. This is the other approach that we have within our communities. Humbly, I don't think either of these two approaches represent what our faith teaches us. Neither does the overexcited, approach of this is the end-all be-all. I think that's very naive. And at the same time, I think this understanding that even discussing this, or if someone were to support a particular candidate who they think are better than some other scenario, that this somehow goes against the core tenets of their faith. No, neither of these seem to be the Islamic approach. Yes, there are people who have endorsed Abdul As-Sayyid who we don't agree with their views. There are people who he has endorsed that we don't agree with their views. This is how this system works. And there's not much of a way to go about it other than this. So what do we understand though? What we understand is that the general framework, the general slogans, the general aims of someone like him are things that are closer to what we would want for ourselves and other people living freely in this country. So very similar to Zohran Mamdani, he had 3 lines or 3 promises, so to speak, that he had made to the people who he was hoping to vote for him, right? And Zohran Mamdani's was about freezing the rent and free daycare and so on and so forth. For him, it was money out of politics, money in your pocket, and Medicare for all. To what extent will he be able to actualize these? That's something that we have to wait and see. To what extent are these things that are completely in line with our faith? Maybe not completely, but they look pretty in line with our faith, for the most part. So when you look at these slogans, and nobody knows what tomorrow will bring, this seems like a candidate who's moving in the right direction. And therefore, if I see a candidate like that, and I see the other options, then things become quite clear. And so this overzealot position that yes, even discussing these things, or voting and things of that nature, are legitimizing the system and so on and so forth. Brothers and sisters, I can go into the seerah of the Ahlul Bayt and narrations and verses of the Quran, and we'll be here a very, very long time. What I will mention to you is go and take a look at the rulings of our maraji'. The rulings of our maraji' are quite clear on this. That they have mentioned that if you see a scenario where your participation can bring in someone who's generally better than another option, then you should do that. So I can have my opinion and you can have your opinion. This is the opinion of our marja'. It's the opinion of our scholars. So we can sit here and discuss this all day. And yes, it is a nuanced topic. It's not as black and white as we make it. But that's why you have maraji' to tell you at the end of the day, is this something I should take part in or I should not take part in?